How are we doing this? Martin from Gardens for Life. As you can see behind me here, we got wood chips delivered, so we're going to expand our wood chip island. And for those of you who haven't seen the videos, I'll just show it to you for a minute. We're also going to show you how we pick some weeds as well. It's actually quite easy to do, but in some areas they do grow quite rampantly at this point, and they need to be taken care of. That is a huge pile of wood chips. I'm sure it'll settle anyway once it rains on it a few times. And look at it compared to the compost pile. Now, that compost pile used to be about twice that big. It has settled also. It's been there for about 6 months now, maybe even longer, 8 months. But look at the size of the wood chip pile.
It's good to climb.
It's like Croagh Patrick.
I can see the Eiffel Tower from up here.
The Eiffel Tower you can see. We have a 1-day how to grow your own food in a no-day garden course coming up, where we'll teach you everything you need to know about growing plants, starting them, planting them and harvesting them, and how to set up the garden and maintain it as well. So if you're interested in that type of thing, take a look at our website. There's a few demo videos too. See some of you there. It's not even that hot a day today, and it's only lunchtime now, and look at that. The tarmac is already melting here from just a tractor actually driving in. So this is our wood chip island. I'll just show you a little picture of it from above too. You can see here, this is the outside of it, and we had plants in pots here previously, and we're going to remove all this plastic here when we're ready to bring in the front loader with the compost. Compost is way over there, and we're going to cover it all with wood chips eventually. As you can see, we've already removed the plastic here, like you've probably seen in our previous video, and it has gone very dry. Unfortunately, we had left it for too long now. We've left it for almost a week now, and you can see it's been quite a drought here in Ireland, even though we're not used to it. And look at the size of the cracks. That's unfortunate. It has dried up so much. I should have left the plastic on until we were ready to actually put the compost straight on top. Normally you'd expect the weeds to actually come back through, but this plastic has been here for 3 years, so that's definitely long enough even for perennials. It doesn't really matter though, because once the compost goes on top, and maybe 8 inches of it, it's going to rehydrate the ground anyway. And I'm going to show you the wood chip island real quick. We're basically just expanding the wood chip island. It has turned quite perennial, alright. For those of you who have seen it in the early days, this was 4 years ago, and that has turned into a little forest now. And you can see the creeping buttercups. They always get away in some places. I need to pull those up today, and I might actually show you some of that and how easy it is to pull them up with no dig. You can see here on the ground it's all wood chips, and there is the odd weeds popping up, sometimes even trees actually. And we'll keep those, keep that growing for the moment, and we're going to harvest that later. But you can see creeping buttercups are definitely my main issue here, but I haven't done any weeding here for 3 years basically. And you can see here, there's aronia berries, Egyptian mint here. So I'm going to be tidying that up, and then we're going to expand it here. So we'll have more planting space. Very excited about that. Everything is literally producing so much right now. It's very productive at the moment. And especially the rhubarb and all the berry bushes. The motherwort, which we have a patch of now, lovage. They're all going to seed too. All the currants here. Various different forms of elders. This is beautiful. It's also a type of elder. Comfrey, always a favourite with the insects. So this is only the 2nd of June, I think it is today, and it is a constant battle basically to try and chop down all the weeds that are going to seed, and trying to actually plant up all the areas that you got under cultivation, like no-dig garden beds for example, or even lasagna gardens too. I would highly recommend you actually practice a method called canopy gardening. I don't know who coined the term first, maybe Michael Pilarski or Toby Hemingway. Canopy gardening is basically when you don't allow any sunlight hitting the ground. Just like this here, as you can see, there's very little sunlight actually hitting the soil, which means that there's no space for weeds, but also there is a lot less soil life dying off from the UV actually hitting them and drying out the soil as well. Look at these rhubarb seeds. That's what happens when you let one go to seed or to flower. You can see the flowering stalk is here. Well, it still produced plenty of stalks this year. When you look at it, it's not that bad. I mean, you could get more production if you cut off the seed stalk on time, but we let some of them go to seed just for the insects, mainly for the flowers that is, and then we get a seed crop also. So these are some of the no-dig beds that have gone in last year. Bit of corn planted here, some berries, some aronia, some garlic. Look at that garlic, looking really good. That's actually Isle of Wight garlic. And we've also got some purple garlic here too. And look at that, isn't there a nettle? A nettle snuck its way in between the garlic, so I gotta pull that up. And that's why I've got my heavy duty gloves here. They're not actually that nice to wear. They're very hard to actually squeeze if you do it like 1,000 times, I guess. But they're very rigid, so they're not that flexible. But for nettles, you definitely need them. You could use leather gloves as well, but I find these ones are way better. Even with pulling up briars, the leather gloves don't always protect you adequately. I mean, the thorns can actually go through the seams on them, whereas these ones are dipped in plastic or rubber and they're sound. I've never had anything come through with these. All these grasses are going to seed and they're right next to the garden bed here. So we're going to mow this and we're just going to basically cut the edges back a little bit so that we get a fairly straight edge here, and then we're going to mow first with the tractor and then with the lawnmower. If you want to see another garden, this is the wall garden for those of you who have seen it before. It's only one wall, so it's not a walled garden. Look at that, it is literally an ocean of Jerusalem artichokes. And this area got away on me. There was a lot of ivy and ferns popping up and some nettles too. So I just covered them, and the grasses as well. Basically, much easier to just cover it for the time being and just leave it for a year, and that's going to take care of it. Lots of elephant garlic we have, and you can see these are actually perennial gardens. They've turned into basically what you see here now, from being garden beds, regular old garden beds, just 2.5 foot wide or 75 centimeters, and a 1 foot path in between. And I let the plants take whatever space they like, and some of them have propagated by seed and they've self-seeded, like these poppies here, which is not a bad thing necessarily. I mean, we're going to have lots of poppy plants now this winter to pull up and use elsewhere. You can see these are the lupins. That's one plant, believe it or not. And there's a baby plant here that actually self-seeded. This one here. Well, this one made seeds last year, and it actually made lots of little plants here. You can see here, it does get quite weedy, but at the same time, a lot of the ground is actually filled with productive plants, like cultivated plants that we've actually planted or we want to grow. But you can see the thistles often come through though. We had like 1 million thistle seeds blown in from the field next door. And here's some dandelion that'll make great rabbit food or chicken food. And I'm going to pull up all these thistles now, just before they go to seed. This one here, yellow ball buddleia. Forget what it's actually called, but it's nice. Lots of cuttings in that now. Of course, the poppies are flamed. They're closed now for the night. Sorry there. Flowers often close at night because I guess there's no point in staying open when the insects are asleep. But aren't they smart enough to be closing up for the night? Well, there's no chance of being pollinated anyway, unless they're waiting for the moths at night time, but those are different flowers. You can see the sticky-mickey or goosegrass is also finding its way through here, so I need to take care of it before it spreads. A little bit of asparagus over there as well, and some kale, more rhubarb. Yeah, so you can see it is, I mean, it's certainly not 100% tidy, but and it's a little bit chaotic, but then again, you know, like Martin Crawford in Devon once said, the tidiness actually costs energy. So in nature, nothing is really tidy. But you can see there is almost no weeds here at all. There's some marshmallow plants, more kale, poppies, valerian plants. Lots of bits and pieces. So there's catmint, hopefully attracting some more cats to our garden from around the neighbourhood. And you can see the red Russian kale has once again self-seeded, and there's some Chinese artichokes here, and they're getting quite tall now. They're nearly 2 foot tall, and some elephant garlic here as well. And on goes the garden. So we're going to pull up a few weeds now, and I'll show you that. I'll put on my mega gloves. It's a thistle. Grab it halfway down or lower, and that's it. Shake soil off it so that it doesn't start up again in the compost pile. It's very easy. And it's not too bad. I haven't done any weeding here for about maybe 6 months or so. So, you know, the area is doing quite well. This is a perennial garden after all, and I'm not too worried about it. As long as I stop the weeds before they go to seed, we're sound. Even grasses, you can see here, they're easy to pull up too. It's just because there is about a 6-inch layer of compost here on the ground. And of course, the grasses and all the weeds, for the lack of a better term, they love it, and they'd like to tap into that resource. You can see here all the seed pods for the red Russian kale already. Oh geez, look at all that grass there. I better take care of that. And more thistles here. Right, want to make sure you shake all the soil off it. There you go, that won't start back up if it rains. Look at the size of that. When you think about it, all these plants that have always been here are quite aggressive, like the thistles, the nettles, and the hawthorns, and all those kind of plants. And they form alliances too, especially with the blackberry. Making it even harder to pull them up, because you can't even get at them. Alright, let's try this nettle here. There's a technique for you. I might flatten it with my foot a little bit, and then I can get at the stalks near the bottom and try and pull up as much of the root as I can, and hopefully without getting stung. Don't worry, I'll tell you when I get stung, or if I get stung. It's definitely a danger zone here. There you go. Now we'll come back for the root now. The more the roots you can pick up, the better. Otherwise, if you're not pulling up the roots, all you're doing is slowing down the plant, but you're not stopping it. And that's it. That's the whole nettle plant. I got stung just a little bit. Nothing too major. Can't really avoid that with a t-shirt. It's gotten really warm in the last while. There's some grass coming up through. I'll try and pick that up too. There you go. Quite almost with no effort, and I'm going to throw all that in our insect pile across the way. Let's get that thistle before I forget it. This one here especially. It's very easy to pull up. Relatively small root when you think about it, for a big plant like that. Have I got an insect pile nearby? I do actually. Always keep your insect piles or compost piles. An insect pile is basically a perennial compost pile. Always keep those nearby, everywhere you are in the garden. Put up the ferns too. The ferns, you want to let them mature a little bit before you pull them up, otherwise you won't get them. Look at the asparagus here. You might think that's quite a few weeds in this garden, and no dig is supposed to be with almost no weeds at all. Well, let me tell you that I have actually done about 2 hours of weeding this year in this particular garden, and that's it. This whole garden here, all the way from here, all the way back to the kale and on. So, you know, I basically just don't have the time to actually maintain it very well. So that's why I'm testing it. So I'm probably going to cover the entire bed or grow space that is now under about 8 inches of no dig. Basically the same thing as a market garden with garden beds. This used to be with pats as well, but the pats have now vanished a couple of years later, and we're just basically letting the plants take care of it and take care of the spacing. As Sepp Holzer once said, let nature take care of the spacing. He just throws the seeds basically. Well, in our case we didn't throw the seeds, we just planted our potted plants in the ground, or even plants that we started in trays in the greenhouse, and they took care of themselves from there on in. As long as the plants are hardy, we don't mind them actually continuing on their life cycle year after year, because that's less work for us. Now there is a bit of weeding in between all these little patches of plants, but you have to consider what this garden actually used to be like, and what used to be here before we started the garden here. Basically it was just briars up to here and thistles and ferns. You can see some of the ferns here still popping through. Well, you can see they're fairly easy to pull up too. We'll just keep pulling them up, and after a few years there'll be almost none left. So that has worked at other gardens that we started as well. I think I'm best off to cover all these beds with wood chip wherever I can, anywhere there is exposed soil anyway, or at least plant it up so that we have a bit of canopy gardening going. That way less sunlight or no sunlight hits the soil, and therefore gives less chance for weed seeds to germinate from below. And our plants are perennial, so they're already got a head start anyway every spring when they've already got a root system built up. Alright folks, I better leave it at that. I'm going to come back with another video to you very soon. So remember, gardening to me anyway is always a balance between filling the spaces that you already have and maintaining those, stopping the weeds nearby from going to seed and spreading those seeds onto your garden spaces, but also a balance to start new plants as well. So you got to start new plants and maintain the plants you have, and try to keep your growing space as full as you can throughout the year, because that way the soil life also gets fed from the sugars from the plants that are performing photosynthesis. So if you're interested in a no-dig gardening course and growing your own food, where we have one coming up on the 18th of June, if you're watching this afterwards, don't worry, they will always have more of those coming up again. Have a look at our website if you want to find out more. And we've got homesteading courses also coming up. They're all one-day courses. You don't have to stay overnight. Basically about 5 or 6 hours long. And yeah, hope to see some of you there. And thanks for watching the video. See you the next time. Bye bye.